From the Cactus, KCTS-FM Phoenix, I'm Jamison Greenwood with Greenwood & Company. Well, I hope everybody's having a good week. We're already in March, already 2 months into 2025, and with March coming in, it's going to be spring break soon, and lots of people do all kinds of stuff on spring break. Some people go to Disneyland, some people travel internationally, they go to Paris, they go to Rome, all of those wonderful places, Tokyo, wherever you might feel inclined to visit. But I was thinking about one thing that some people also like to do during this time is camping, and when you went to college in the Arizona high country as I did, it was popular to camp almost any time of the year. And one time, Colton, Heather, and Annabelle and I decided to go camping, but Colton had some big plans that didn't quite come to par, which, well, let me just tell you. Since High Country University is amongst a multitude of natural wonders, snowboarding, skiing, hiking, and camping are all popular. My friend Colton, the environmentalist whom I knew from St. Edward's Episcopal Church and who worked as a barista at Brew-Beck's coffee shop, was a frequent camper. His dorm room in the next building over from mine was stuffed with knapsacks, sleeping bags, a camp stove, as well as a tent. Heather and Annabelle, fellow church friends and Colton's and my love interests respectively, tended to focus more on gym workouts and hiking, but one spring as the snow began to melt, they bought a big purple tent on discount at Sportsman's Warehouse. Then they brought up the prospect of a camping trip to Colton and I at Brew-Beck's one afternoon. "It'll be fun," Heather said. "We'll build a campfire like at Chapel Rock. I could play my sax," Annabelle added. "Jimmy could read his poems." That comment made my cheeks get a little bit rosy for Annabelle, but my hope is she didn't mind. "I've got a tent and a couple sleeping bags back at my dorm," Colton said, "and a REI gift card I still need to use up. We got a gas hot plate and a percolator so we can have coffee," Heather added. "What's a percolator?" Colton asked. "For coffee," I explained. "One of those stovetop coffee brewers." "Great. We'll bring some coffee from Brew-Beck's." Heather then pulled out her phone to search for campsites. "Only $40 for this one." "That's 10 for each of us," Colton added. He pulled out his phone and Venmo'd Heather, after which Annabelle did the same. I took 2 $5 bills out of my wallet, and by then we had our site reserved. However, a couple of weeks later, as I waited with my suitcase, backpack, sleeping bag, and pillow for Colton to pick me up in his Kia Rio, I began to worry about how this entire camping trip could perhaps go wrong. The thought of joining a bunch of elementary school kids for a camping trip when I was younger was never much fun to me, and although my friends Theo Taylor and I had a good time at a Presbyterian church camp in Payson, Arizona one summer, I remember it more for the uncomfortable bunks in the cabins and the atrocious bathrooms. Ones that made a gas station men's room in downtown Phoenix with an unflushed bowel movement look more like a Waldorf Astoria ensuite or the guest bathroom in my Grammy Benson's house, spotless with fresh folded towels and the scent of rose petal aerosol spray in the air. However, this camping trip would be different because I would be going with my college best friends, Colton and Heather, and the one it seemed I'd loved from the moment of my birth, Annabelle. Though I lived in constant worry that the slightest inadvertent action would sabotage the chance she would fall in love with me, I knew that if I had any hope she would, I would need to play my cards with care and keep betting when my hand seemed like a winner, which this camping trip for sure was. Yet upon Colton picking me up, I learned that what I at first thought was a full house of 3 kings and 2 queens may in fact have been a straight flush, aces high. "I need to talk to you about a plan for our camping trip," Colton told me. "Okay," I said. "What might it be? Are we going to sing the campfire song from SpongeBob?" Colton at times reflected that lovable sea sponge in personality, so this would not be implausible. "No," he shook his head. "Oh, are we going to lead a protest against deforestation?" "No, it's more serious than that, dude." He opened his backpack and removed a small paper bag with the logo for Dillard's department store. "I'm going to propose to Heather." As soon as Colton told me of his plan, he removed a small box upholstered in burgundy velvet with the Dillard's department store logo embossed in gold gilt. Inside the white satin lining was a half-carat-sized diamond in a gold setting. Now, I bet that this shocked you just as much as it shocked me, but even though further discussion on a revelation like this cannot wait, we have to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll find out more about Colton's plan and how it went. You are listening to Greenwood and Company on KCTS. The weekend is here. Time to relax, make new friends, and look for love. What do all these things have in common? They make a perfect pair with Judge Thatcher's Lawful Lager. A cool, refreshing blend of wheat, hops, and castor beans for that repellent but refreshing taste. We'll make you forget all your cares of the week, reveal things that will make your friends burst out laughing, and if you're lucky enough to get a first kiss, your mouth will be clean as a freshly sanitized public urinal. Every time a gavel lands, have Lawful Lager close at hand. Judge Thatcher's Lawful Lager. Available in cans, bottles, or fast-dissolving strips to freshen your mouth. Please drink responsibly. And welcome back. You are listening to Greenwood and Company on the Cactus, KCTS. So we found out that Colton was planning to propose to Heather. Now let's elaborate on how he planned to do it. It's promise style, Colton said of the ring that he planned to give to Heather. Annabelle said Heather talks about promise style engagement rings all the time. Colton, I said, are you sure that out in the middle of the forest is the right place to do this? I'd never even kissed a girl, but I figured based on a few proposals that I'd seen in movies and on television, the proper methodology involved an elaborate evening of dinner, dancing, fancy clothes, and a clear night sky with a full moon shining bright. The skies were prettier in the forest preserves, but the light of the moon was obstructed by the trees. A nice suit or a satin dress could get scratched or torn by the branches or bark, and if a hopeful guy wasn't watching, he could drop his knee into a pile of fox poop. She and Annabelle are always hiking, Colton said. The forests are one of our favorite places. I'm a forestry major. What better place to propose? It's mating season for the animals. Well, I'll say a prayer for the best, I told him, hoping to reassure him. We met Heather and Annabelle at their apartment and loaded up their Subaru with our 2 tents, sleeping bags, and a number of pots, pans, and coffee cups needed for a rustic evening in the forest. We made a campfire, sang the campfire song, Disney songs, Seasons of Love from Rent, and even a couple of hymns like Lift Every Voice and Sing. Despite the fact that Colton would have loved to share a tent with Heather, and I would give almost anything to share the other tent with Annabelle, the girls slept in one tent and the guys slept in another. We put out and stirred the fire per the instructions of Smokey the Bear, but despite our thick socks, sleeping bags, and long-sleeve pajamas, the spring air was a bit chillier than we were thinking. As I used a book light to compose some poetry in my notebook, Colton was shivering, and I could soon hear his teeth chatter. "Do you want me to make you some decaf coffee to warm you up, Colton?" I asked. "Well, we'll have to stir the fire again. Do you want a melatonin to help you sleep? Then I won't be able to get up in time to put the gasket on the engine." I was about to point out that Heather and Annabelle's Subaru had nothing wrong with it, but he pulled out his phone to explain. "I'm going to put the gasket," he made a ring shape with his thumb and index finger, "on the engine," a picture of Heather in a summer dress on the beach when we were in Santa Barbara for a church convention. He wanted to be sure he could get up early to propose to Heather, and was worried the melatonin might make him oversleep. Eventually Colton got tired enough that he was able to rest as opposed to sleep, but even though rest is important, rest cannot substitute for the quality of restoration that sleep provides. As for myself, sleeping was practically impossible, and though physically I rested, I continued to pore over the dozens of thoughts in my mind. What if Heather turned him down? This was doubtful, but if it happened, how would I best help him? Moreover, would it mean Annabelle and I could never be together? I was already chilly, even with my sleeping bag, flannel pajamas, and thick socks, but with all the anxiety my head began to hurt, and I began to feel a tightness in my chest, a production of tears, and a manly need to force them back, straining my reserve even further. After several hours of this agony, I heard a rustling in the brush, and feared a bear or other animal might attack us. I remained still, hoping the predator would turn away. Then I heard the rustling again and pulled on my Van sneakers just in case I needed to make a run for it. I thought of waking Colton, but when the sound disappeared, I proceeded carefully to check. It seemed it was over, but I wanted to be sure. I shone my flashlight around, but it turned out to be only a deer. The doe ran away from our campsite as soon as her eyes met my flashlight, and I proceeded to return to the tent after turning away, assuming all was well. Yet once I turned around, I was struck by a faint light in the distance and what sounded like a low-pitched car horn. Against my own better judgment, I walked toward it, yet as I inched closer, I realized the horn was in fact the sound of Annabelle playing Don't Fence Me In on her saxophone. I knew I should just let the musician I adored alone so she could have a moment with nature, but again, against my own better judgment, I soldiered on to be with her. Annabelle was sitting cross-legged upon a tree stump, wearing Uggs and plaid pajama pants with a red blanket wrapped around her. A bit rougher than the satin dresses she always wore at Brew-Beck's, but still the sheen of her lemonade hair and the twinkle of her green eyes shone bright in the light from her red kerosene lantern. "Hey, Jimmy," she paused playing, putting down her saxophone and inching herself over so as to offer to share the tree stump with me. "You couldn't sleep?" "No," I said as I sat on the stump next to her. "I couldn't." "I couldn't either," she replied. A few animals had come to take notice of us, including a squirrel, a pair of rabbits, and a doe, perhaps the same deer I'd seen before, but I was lost in the gleam of Annabelle's eyes and the slight sheen the lantern gave her lips. It was dark out, but if the moment called for it, I could see well enough that she'd at least receive a kiss, and if I was really lucky, she would kiss me back. Then we heard a faint sound in the distance. "Colton needs your help." It was Heather, who came and informed her cousin and I that Colton had another accident. When I found out it was in the men's bathroom, I knew for sure I was going to have to be the one to go help him. If you've never gone camping in the Arizona high country before, the so-called restrooms are far worse than the ones I feared from the Presbyterian camp I talked about earlier. They're more like outhouses, and although the sinks have running water, the toilets are plastic seats fastened over literal pits dug at least 10 feet into the ground with your fluids or solid waste essentially falling into oblivion. The good news is that the laws of physics usually prevent your refuse from splashing back onto your private areas, but the bad news is they smell awful, and the plastic frames that you sit on can degrade over time. In Colton's case, the plastic frame failed, and his buttocks wound up dropping about 1.5 feet over a solid concrete subfloor, which caused him excruciating pain when he hit it. He somehow found the strength to pull his underwear back up, but it was not the most fun experience I had trying to lift him out of a hole, fearing he could be caked in perhaps years of decade-old human waste, which could be infected with bubonic plague or esophageal hemorrhaging. Anyhow, Heather and I had to carry him back to the tents, and we all decided to just pack up and drive to a hotel in Fort Abbey where he could shower and we could actually sleep. But all I'll say is if you do go to a campground near Fort Abbey and have to use the bathroom, please bring a camper or at the very least one of those safety rail toilet seats that seniors use. Now as for Colton, he was not able to put the gasket on the engine, so to speak, but he was not ready to give up. You are listening to Greenwood and Company on KCTS. In the heartland, we harvest grain, cattle, and poultry by staying true to convenient values. In urban areas, we service utilities, except when we realize it's not cost-effective. And in your backyard, we do whatever we can to make money and cut costs. We believe in short-term benefits and long-term profits. We may not be able to count, but these are the 6 core values the Hexagon Corporation lives by, at least until we find a more lucrative solution. Whatever we're selling, whatever we're servicing, and whatever we're trying to yank from under your feet in search of a quick buck, we'll always remember our 6 core values, even if we don't actually apply it toward what we're doing today, and even if the 6 core values are actually only 2 or 3. We don't care much about you, but we'll take care of you mainly when we can make the big bucks. Hexagon Corporation. Yesterday, today, 6 sides. Yeah. Additional support for Greenwood & Company comes from the Folding Chair Charitable Trusts, the Save the Floppy Disks Foundation, and the Shag Carpet Preservation Fund. Well, all the talk of camping makes me think about nature, and when I think about it being March 1st, I think of the fact that spring will be here soon. I believe it's March 21st is the spring equinox every year, and I recalled the coming of spring, which is a beautiful thing when you think about like Easter and new life and all that, but in Arizona, especially Phoenix where I grew up, it can bring some bad omens. So here's my little poem, The Coming of Spring. Bright skies last longer at both ends. New life begins for flora, fauna, and the spirit. Flowers blossom as birds start flying. A week's vacation enters in, breaking the monotony of work and school before Easter brings joy and chocolate bunnies. Yet warm weather brings bad omens of extreme summer heat to come upon our land, death to those who hike without precaution. So take plenty of water on morning hikes, ensure you follow heat precautions, yet still there's cooler days. Enjoy them. That brings an end to this week's Greenwood & Company. Our show was created and hosted by yours truly and was written by him along with James Salison and Minnesota Martinez. The engineer is Ivan Crosby. Jonas Andrews answers the phones even though we don't take calls on this program. The theme was composed by Martin Landstrom, and our costumes are provided by Grandma's Garage Thrift Shop. All the characters, settings, and situations depicted in this program, along with all advertised products, are entirely fictional, and any similarities to products, events, or persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. Also, KCTS is not an actual radio station. Be sure to visit our website at JamisonGreenwoodPodcast.com to learn more about Greenwood & Company, and make sure to follow us on the podcast platform of your choice and share with your friends on social media. Just a reminder to please be careful if you are going out on the 101, the 17, or Route 66 tonight. I'm Jamison Greenwood, and until we meet again, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay young at heart. Good night. This is KCTS FM Phoenix. Stay tuned for Lacking in Substance.